Well, defending and blocking, it's always it's a hard one to determine, and a lot of times it depends on the series. Sometimes you have to leave a car width, sometimes you're allowed to go at will. But I think, the biggest definition is moving in reaction to somebody behind you. And if you move into reaction, to me, that's blocking.
If you make a move after the guy behind you makes a move, that's called, they call that blocking. That actually is a penalty. Defending your line is if you come out of a corner and then you move to the inside line for the next corner and don't make another move, that would be classed as defending.
Well, in my mind, being the car in front, whether you got there by a pass, by strategy or whatever, you've earned the right to defend that position. And I've always been a big believer in being allowed to do that. I think that's what makes good racing. The days where we weren't allowed to defend at all, a guy got a run, he went on the inside, he outbroke and it went by. There was no art to passing. It really took the racing out of it in my mind. And so now I believe the best way that you can come about it is what the IndyCar series does. You're allowed to make one move. It has to be preemptive. If you see a guy's got a run on you, and when you pick your line, you stick with it. When it gets too much is when you're reacting to another driver. If they move first and then you move, that can create some really dangerous situations, especially in an open wheel car.
You know where he's the weakest point that you have and the strongest point that the other guy have. So that means if you move before him, you give him one direction. You already show him, listen, I'm gonna go here, you can go on the outside, or vice versa, whatever it is. Now the worst thing is when you move and the guy keep looking in the mirror and try and move. If you move a right or move a left, those are the problems that you have, because and then you don't know what is gonna happen.
The basic description that we give at the driver's briefings for blocking is movement and reaction. It's driving your mirrors. Taking a defensive line is one thing. If you've sort of taken that line first, you stick to it. But if you're taking a defensive line and you're doing so in reaction to the car that's behind you, you're putting yourself at risk for blocking.
If he decides to take the inside line, he needs to stay on the inside line. If he comes back in front of another driver in order to impede the driver that's taking the faster line, then that's blocking.
If we see something that's completely egregious, we've talked about it before, there's no guarantee of a warning. If somebody's heading that direction, we see something that we're not happy with, we'll send a message. We can do it through the warning flag, we can send a message to the team to relay to the driver. Here's a warning for blocking. This is the activity that we don't want you to be doing. And if it happens again, then we're going to move it into a penalty phase. And so depending on the series, depending on the cars, a penalty can range from a drive-through to a stop and go. Typically, the more professional and higher up the series is, the more punitive the penalty would be.
You can't always be the fastest guy on the track, and sometimes it comes to strategy. I want to win every race. I come here to win, and if it means I might have a slower car, but I can play the strategy better, meaning defend, meaning pass somebody who tries to defend me, hey, that's what it's all about.
I still think it's part of racing. You should be able to defend. It's a fine line, as everybody knows, between defending and straight up blocking. I think there's very good guys that know how to do it pretty subtle, to make their car wide and obviously make it very difficult for people to get around.
Making your car wide is definitely different than straight up blocking. It's sort of putting your car just a foot or two off the normal line and maybe taking away that little bit of air or a little bit of clean space that another driver would want to try and get a run. And it's not an easy thing to do. It's a tough thing to get good at. It's a tough thing to do without being blatant about blocking per se. And it takes a lot of practice and experience to get it. Some drivers are really good at it and you just cannot get by them. They're just good at placing the car in the right place in the right part of the track.
Defending well is making sure that you always get a good exit out of the corner, because you're on the inside. You probably can brake a little bit early because this guy has to go around the outside, but it's ensuring that you get off the apex with a good exit. And sometimes you may even slow up to slow him up to get a run. There's a lot of little tricks like that that will help to keep people behind.
Aiming for the best exit and traction, so you're making stretch on exit. And versus is versus. It's very easy to, wide open entry, and very difficult to do it in the very next corner. Then you can actually defend entry to the corner. So depending on that, you can set up your position.
If somebody defends their position on me by going down the inside, I'm going to stay to the outside. I'm going to try and crisscross them and come off the corner below them and make the pass on the exit. So it's not like if I defend, it means that nobody can pass. It just means you got to do it differently.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you're blocking, it's the thing is you're going to focus on the people who are behind you instead of focusing forward. And I think the biggest thing in racing is really to focus forward because you want to pass new people. So if you're looking in your mirrors all the time, you're not going to go forward.
That's the main thing. When you start driving, looking in the mirror, you're going to be at least half a second slow, and that's what going to give opportunity for the guy behind to make a pass.
And it's very easy to do. I think even going back to go-kart days, looking over your shoulder or worrying too much about the people that are behind you, will tend to slow you down. You're not focusing on what's ahead or trying to get the best out of your car on that lap or every lap in that stint. So yeah, typically when you see people start to fight for a position, they'll start backing up. Other people behind will catch up, gets into more of a group, gets more defending, gets a bit crazy. So yeah, it definitely slows you down.
Absolutely. It's very easy to spend too much time looking backwards when you're defending than focusing on going forwards. And, sometimes the best defense is a good offense, and really just keeping your head down, looking forward and focusing on your own lines and lap times can be enough to keep a car behind you. And it can be a careful balance on how much you're watching the guy behind you and not letting that catch you out.
Today, the young drivers grow up on the daddy's go-kart and have been told their entire racing career to that point, don't you let him pass you, or you bump him out of the way if he's in your way, or do what you got to do to get in front, and that's really not a good thing.
I think the biggest thing is kind of have the respect for the other person that is racing you. Racing, you always try to defend a little bit your position for sure. But when you see that the guy has a really good run, you have to kind of leave the space. But because I think it's going to come back to you. If you're the one who's always kind of a moving chicane out there, you know that a lot of people are going to get mad at you and do the same thing to you. So I think the biggest thing is just kind of really respect each other. I think racing hard is really important, but have the respect for each other.